As the first light of dawn stretches across the Nile, the land of Egypt stirs to life once more. The air is cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and fresh river reeds. In the villages and cities of Ptolemaic Egypt, a time when Greek rulers sat upon the ancient throne of the pharaohs, the rhythms of daily life unfold with quiet certainty. This was an era of blending, where old traditions met new influences, where the gods of Egypt stood beside those of Greece, and where the routines of home and hearth remained as steady as the river's flow. Let us step into this world, not with the grandeur of kings and conquests, but with the soft, familiar motions of morning. The household awakens. Inside a modest mud-brick home, the first movements are slow and deliberate. The floor is packed earth, swept smooth, warmed slightly by the morning sun filtering through small, high windows. The walls, made of sun-dried bricks mixed with straw, hold the coolness of the night a little longer. A woman rises from a low wooden bed, its frame strung with woven reeds. She adjusts her linen tunic, light, undyed, soft from years of wear, and ties a simple belt at her waist. Beside her, a clay oil lamp, long extinguished, sits on a low stool, waiting for evening's return. Outside, the household's chickens cluck softly, scratching at the ground. A cat, sleek, watchful, pads silently along the edge of the courtyard, its eyes catching the early light. The first task, bread for the day. The heart of the home is the kitchen, a corner of the courtyard where a domed mud oven stands, its sides still warm from yesterday's baking. Nearby, a flat grind-in stone waits, its surface worn smooth by years of use. The woman kneels beside it, taking handfuls of emmer wheat, the grain of ancient Egypt, and begins to grind. The rhythmic scrape of stone against grain fills the air, steady as a heartbeat. She works patiently, her hands moving in practiced circles, turning the rough kernels into fine flour. Beside her, a clay jar holds yesterday's sourdough starter, a living thing, passed down through generations. She mixes it with water, kneading the dough until it is soft and pliant. There is no hurry. Bread making is a slow art, one that cannot be rushed. As the dough rests, she tends to the fire, feeding it with dried reeds and chaff. The flames flicker, casting gentle shadows on the walls. A simple morning meal. While the bread bakes, the family gathers. A small clay dish holds dates, sweet, sticky, a gift from the palm trees lining the river. Another bowl contains fresh goat's milk, still warm from the morning's milking. There are no elaborate feasts here, only the quiet satisfaction of a meal earned by one's own hands. The bread emerges from the oven, its crust golden, its scent rich and earthy. It is broken by hand, shared without words. The taste is wholesome, slightly nutty, a flavor unchanged for thousands of years. The rhythm of the Nile. Beyond the home, the world is waking. Fishermen push their reed boats into the water, their nets draped over their shoulders. Farmers walk toward the fields, their hoes balanced on their backs. The river, ever present, murmurs softly as it flows. Life here is shaped by the Nile, its floods, its bounty, its endless, patient cycles. There is no need for haste. The day will unfold, as it always has, in quiet harmony with the land. And as the sun climbs higher, the household too turns to its tasks. Weaving, mending, tending to the garden. But for now, in these first soft hours, there is only bread and warmth, and the gentle certainty of another day in Ptolemaic Egypt. In the golden light of mid-morning, when the bread has been eaten and the hearth's embers burn low, The people of Ptolemaic Egypt turn to the crafts that sustain their daily lives. This is a world shaped by hands, hands that weave, mold, carve, and stitch, transforming raw earth and fiber into objects of usefulness and quiet beauty. Let us step into the shade of a courtyard, where the tools of these crafts lie waiting, and watch as the household's labor unfolds, slow and steady as the turning of a potter's wheel. The potter's quiet art. In a corner of the courtyard, a potter sits cross-legged before a simple wooden wheel. A lump of Nile clay, dug from the riverbanks and purified by straining, rests before him. With damp hands, he presses his thumbs into its center, coaxing the shape of a jar from the spinning earth. The wheel turns with a soft, rhythmic creak, not the fast whirl of a master's workshop, but the patient pace of a household artisan. There is no need for haste. A jar must be strong, its walls even, its base broad enough to hold grain or oil without tipping. Nearby, finished pots dry in the sun, some plain, others decorated with faint ridges or the imprint of a thumb. Later, they will be fired in a pit of smoldering straw, emerging as sturdy vessels ready to hold water, beer, or the household's precious stores. The weavers dance. Under the shelter of a palm-thatched roof, a woman works at her loom. The frame is simple. 2 wooden beams lashed together, the warp threads stretched taut between them. Her fingers move with the ease of long habit, passing the shuttle back and forth, back and forth. The linen she weaves is fine and pale, the threads spun from flax grown along the river's edge. Some will become tunics, light as breath. Others will be traded at the market for spices or honey. The rhythm of the loom is a quiet one, the whisper of thread, the occasional creak of wood, a sound as familiar as the wind through the reeds. Beside her, a basket holds spindles of dyed wool, a rare luxury in this land of linen. Perhaps it will become a fringe for a shawl, or the patterned border of a child's tunic. The carpenter's measure. In the shade of a sycamore fig, a man shapes a wooden stool. His tools are few: a bronze chisel, a mallet, a saw with teeth sharpened to a fine edge. The wood is acacia, hard and golden, cut from the groves beyond the village. He works slowly, shaving away curls of wood until the legs sit even, until the seat is smooth under the palm. There is no waste here. Even the smallest chips will be saved, later fed to the fire, or used to patch a crumbling wall. Nearby, a child watches, learning the craft in silence. One day, these hands too will know the weight of the mallet, the grain of the wood, the way a well-made joint fits snug as a secret. The basketry of reeds. At the edge of the courtyard, an elder sits with a bundle of fresh reeds, splitting them with a bone knife. Her hands, though lined with years, move with certainty, twisting and weaving the strands into the beginnings of a basket. The patterns are old, spirals, chevrons, the same designs her mother taught her, and her mother before that. Some baskets will hold bread. Others will carry fish from the river or fruit from the market. Each is made to last, to bend without breaking, to hold its shape through seasons of use. As she works, a cat curls at her feet, blinking lazily in the sun. The tools of the home. Scattered throughout the courtyard are the small, unremarkable objects that make life possible. A bronze mirror, polished to a dull gleam, resting on a linen cloth. A wooden comb, its teeth worn smooth from years of use. A stone pallet for grinding coal, its surface stained dark with use. A clay spindle whirl, its weight steadying the twist of thread. None of these things are grand. None will be remembered in the annals of kings, but they are the quiet companions of daily life, the unseen hands that shape the hours. The pace of the day. The sun climbs higher, and the household pauses. A jug of barley beer is passed, its taste cool and slightly sour. A handful of figs is shared, their sweetness a small delight. There is no rush. The work will wait. For now, there is only the shade of the courtyard, the murmur of voices, the slow, steady turning of hands to their tasks. As the sun climbs toward its zenith, the people of Ptolemaic Egypt turn their steps toward the marketplace, a place of quiet commerce, where the fruits of labor are exchanged in the age-old dance of trade. Here, beneath awnings of woven reeds, the rhythms of daily life continue, unhurried and familiar. This is not the clamor of a great city's bazaar, but the murmur of a local market, where faces are known, where bargains are struck with a nod, and where the wealth of the land is measured in baskets of grain, jars of oil, and skeins of linen. Let us wander through its stalls, listening to the stories whispered in every transaction. The arrangement of wares. The marketplace is not a chaotic sprawl, but an orderly space, each seller in their accustomed place, their goods arranged with care. Near the entrance, farmers spread out their produce on woven mats. Bundles of emmer wheat tied with reeds, baskets of dates, their skins glossy and dark, fresh onions, their green stalks still damp from the morning's harvest, clay jars of honey, their mouths sealed with beeswax. Farther on, the potter displays his wares, jars for storage, bowls for eating, slender oil lamps with pinched spouts. A woman runs her finger along the rim of a cup, testing its smoothness. The language of trade. A fisherman, his arms still smelling of the river, lays out his catch on a bed of fresh reeds. Silvery Nile perch, their gills still flushed with pink catfish. Whiskered and heavy, a woven trap full of tiny fish, to be dried in the sun and eaten whole. He trades not for coin, but for goods. A jar of oil for his family's lamp, a measure of grain to supplement his catch. The merchant weighs the grain in a bronze scale, its counterweight a carved stone in the shape of a duck. Nearby, a weaver unfurls a length of linen, its edges still bearing the faint creases of the loom. A customer holds it up to the light, checking for flaws. The bargaining is quiet, conducted in half-spoken phrases and gestures as old as the Nile. The tools of measurement. On a low table, a scribe sits with his palette, a board with cakes of red and black ink, a reed brush, a roll of papyrus. He records transactions in careful hieratic script, his hand moving steadily down the page. Beside him, the market's official measures are kept. A cubit rod of polished wood, marked with notches, bronze weights shaped like animals, a frog, a calf, a sleeping lion, a clay vessel marked to show the proper volume of grain for a fair trade. These are the unspoken rules of the market, the safeguards against dispute, the foreign touches. Here and there, the influence of the wider Ptolemaic world can be seen. A Greek merchant offers thin-walled drinking cups, their surfaces painted with vines, a jar of olive oil, imported from across the sea, its scent rich and unfamiliar. A roll of papyrus, inscribed with Greek letters, waiting to be sent upriver. But these are exceptions. Most trade remains local, rooted in the timeless exchange of the Nile's bounty. The midday pause. As the heat grows heavier, the market's pace slows. Vendors retreat into the shade, sharing a simple meal. Flatbread dipped in sesame paste, a salad of lentils and spring onions, dried figs passed from hand to hand. A water carrier makes his rounds, pouring from a clay vessel into outstretched cups. The water is cool, drawn from a deep well at dawn. The markets end by late afternoon. The awnings begin to fold. What remains unsold will be taken home, to be eaten, to be used, to be traded another day. The scribe rolls his papyrus, tying it with a string. The bronze weights are gathered into their leather pouch. The farmers shoulder their empty baskets, their steps turning toward home. And as the shadows lengthen, the marketplace empties, leaving only the imprint of feet in the dust, soon to be erased by the evening wind. As the sun sinks toward the western hills, painting the sky in shades of ochre and violet, the households of Ptolemaic Egypt begin their evening rituals. This is a time of quiet transition, when tools are set aside, when the scents of supper mingle with wood smoke, and when families gather in the fading light to share the day's final hours. Let us step into this twilight world, where the pace slows to match the sinking sun, and where every action carries the comfortable weight of routine. The evening hearth. In the courtyard, the cooking fire is stoked anew. Unlike the morning's baking fire, which burned hot and fast, this one is built for slow simmering. A three-legged bronze pot rests in the embers, its contents bubbling gently. A stew of lentils and onions, seasoned with cumin and coriander, fish from the morning's catch, wrapped in Nile clay to bake in its own juices. A clay dish of barley porridge, sweetened with dates and honey for the children. The cook, perhaps the grandmother of the household, stirs the pot with a long wooden spoon, her face warmed by the fire's glow. Occasionally, she adds a pinch of salt from a woven reed container, tasting the broth with the practiced ease of decades. The lighting of lamps. As darkness gathers, small clay lamps are brought forth. Shaped like tiny bowls with pinched spouts, they are filled with castor oil or sesame oil. A woman twists a flax wick into place and lights it from the cooking fire. The lamps are placed with care, one by the hearth to guide the cook's hands, another near the doorway to welcome any evening visitors, a third in the family shrine, its flickering light illuminating small offerings of bread and flowers. The light is soft and golden, barely pushing back the darkness, but enough to see by. Shadows dance on the mud brick walls, making the familiar space seem somehow new. The evening meal. The family gathers on woven mats around a low wooden table. There are no chairs. Everyone sits cross-legged or kneels comfortably. The meal is served in shared dishes. The lentil stew in a wide ceramic bowl. Fresh flatbread to scoop and dip a salad of cucumbers and radishes from the garden. Small clay cups of barley beer, its foam clinging to the sides. Conversation is quiet and intermittent. A child recounts something learned at the temple school. The father mentions the progress of the flax harvest. The grandmother hums softly as she eats, a song without words that everyone knows by heart. After supper tasks. With the meal concluded, the household moves through its evening chores with the efficiency of long habit. Leftovers are covered with clean cloth and set aside. Cooking pots are scrubbed clean with sand and river water. The last embers of the fire are banked with ashes to preserve coals for morning. A teenage girl takes up her spindle, twisting flax fibers into thread by the fading light. The rhythmic motion is soothing. The spindle whirl humming as it spins, preparing for rest. As true darkness falls, the household prepares for sleep. Sleeping mats are unrolled in the main room, padded with straw and covered with linen sheets. A clay headrest is positioned just so, its curved surface cool against the skin. A final check is made of the animals, the chickens safely in their coop, the cat curled in its favorite corner. The grandmother dips her finger in a jar of scented oil, perhaps lotus or myrrh, and touches it to her wrists. The fragrance is subtle but comforting, a small luxury at day's end. The night's watch. Outside, the village grows still. Only a few lights remain. The baker's oven, already being prepared for tomorrow's bread. The lamp in the temple courtyard, kept perpetually burning the distant torches of night fishermen on the Nile inside the home. Breathing slows. The last waking thoughts drift like smoke toward dreams. The stars, so much brighter here than in our modern world, turn slowly overhead, keeping their ancient vigil. The people of Ptolemaic Egypt measured their lives not by the ticking of clocks, but by the great slow breathing of the Nile. The annual flood that came with the summer rains far to the south, the retreating waters that left fresh black soil, the planting and harvesting that followed as surely as sunrise follows night. This was a rhythm older than the pyramids, unchanged by Greek rulers or foreign gods. Let us walk through the agricultural year, feeling its pulse in the calloused hands of farmers and the creak of well-worn tools. Akhet, the season of inundation. June-September. When Sirius rose heliacally just before dawn, the people knew the flood would soon come. The river swelled slowly at first, then with gathering power. Farmers moved to higher ground, their simple houses on mounds standing like islands. Children laughed at frogs appearing miraculously in the newly formed ponds. The air smelled of wet earth and possibility. During these months, when fields lay underwater, labor turned to other tasks. Repairing irrigation ditches with hose and baskets, mending fishing nets by firelight, crafting new tools in anticipation of planting. The temples distributed grain from their storehouses, and for a brief time, there was a collective pause, a chance to rest before the work ahead. Pere, the season of emergence. October-February. As the waters receded, leaving a fresh layer of fertile silt, the land steamed under the autumn sun. Every household joined the planting. Men broke the damp earth with wooden plows pulled by oxen. Women and children followed, scattering seed from woven baskets. The poorest farmers, without oxen, turned the soil by hand with copper-bladed hoes. The most common crops grew in orderly patches. Emmer wheat for bread and beer, barley for animal fodder and brewing, flax for linen thread, onions, garlic, lentils for the daily pot. At the edges of fields, fruit trees grew heavy with dates, figs, and pomegranates. Bees hummed between blossoms, making honey for the gods' offerings and the children's treats. Shemu, the season of harvest, March-May. When the grain turned golden under the hot sun, the entire village moved as one. Reapers worked in teams, cutting stalks with sickles of sharpened flint. Children gathered fallen ears in baskets, singing harvest songs. Older women winnowed grain by tossing it into the air with wooden forks, letting the chaff blow away. The harvest was both celebration and careful calculation. First fruits went to the temple as offering. A portion was set aside as seed for next year. The remainder was measured into household storerooms. Evenings after harvest saw impromptu feasts, extra bread, a bit more beer, stories told by firelight of years when the Nile ran high or low. The tools that tamed the land. In every household, well-worn implements rested by the doorway. The hoe, its wooden handle smooth from generations of hands, the sickle, flint blades set in a curved wooden frame. The shaduf, a counterweighted lever for lifting water, its bucket swaying like a drowsy bird. These were not fancy tools, just practical objects darkened by soil and sweat, repaired repeatedly until nothing remained of the original. The animals that shared the work. No farm could thrive without its creatures. Oxen for plowing, their great patient heads nodding as they walked donkeys for carrying loads, their ears twitching at flies, geese that weeded fields by eating young shoots of unwanted plants, cats that kept granaries safe from mice and rats. At dusk, all were brought into the household courtyard, not just for protection, but because they were part of the family. The gods of field and flood. Small shrines dotted the landscape. A figurine of Osiris buried at the field's edge to ensure fertility offerings of beer poured into the irrigation ditches for Hapi, god of the inundation. A handful of grain left on a flat stone for Renenutet, the harvest goddess. These were not grand ceremonies, but simple habits, like wiping one's feet before entering a house. The divine was woven into daily work as tightly as reeds in a basket. In the shade of a sycamore fig, where the afternoon light falls in dappled patterns, the women of the household gather to transform raw materials into objects of usefulness and quiet beauty. Here, where the air smells of wet clay and flax fibers, the domestic crafts of Ptolemaic Egypt unfold in unhurried motions perfected over centuries. These are not the grand workshops of royal artisans, but the everyday spaces where necessity and creativity meet, where rough flax becomes fine linen, where river mud becomes vessels to hold life's essentials. The linen makers, from stem to thread. The process begins in the fields, where flax plants stand straight as soldiers. Rippling blue flowers give way to seed pods that rattle when dry plants are pulled whole from the earth, not cut, to preserve the long fibers bundles soak in slow-moving canal water for weeks, until the woody stems soften. By the household courtyard, women sit in companionable silence as they crack the retted stems with wooden mallets, scrape away the softened pith with bronze knives, comb the fibers with spiked boards until they flow like pale hair. The spinner's art, a woman sits with her spindle, a simple whirl of clay or stone on a wooden shaft. She draws out fibers with one hand while twisting the spindle with the other. The thread grows, winding around the shaft in a neat spiral. Children practice with tufts of wool, their early attempts lumpy but earnest. The loom's song. The vertical loom leans against a courtyard wall. Warped threads hang taut, weighted with smooth river stones. The weaver passes the shuttle back and forth, her fingers dancing. A wooden beater bar presses each new row snug against the last. The resulting fabric is cool and strong, ideal for light tunics that breathe in the heat, wraps for carrion babies, bandages for the village healer. The potter's domain. Clay from the riverbank. Each household has its favorite gathering spot where the Nile's annual flood leaves deposits of fine silt. Clay is dug in the cool morning hours. Impurities are picked out by hand before wedging. At the kick wheel, the potter works barefoot, his toes flicking the wheel into motion. A lump of centered clay rises and falls like breathing. Thumbs press inward to open the form. Fingers draw the walls upward in a smooth spiral. Common household shapes emerge. Caduce jars for water storage, their porous walls keeping contents cool. Bread molds with conical interiors. Cooking pots with rounded bottoms for nestling in coals. Decoration and firing. Simple tools create patterns. A comb's teeth, wavy lines in the damp clay. A reed stem presses hieroglyphs of protection. A pebble burnishes surfaces to a soft sheen. The firing pit glows orange at dusk. Pots are stacked carefully with fuel between them. Dried dung makes a slow, even burn. By morning, the ceramics ring with a clear, hard tone. Other household crafts basket, weaving by the river's edge, reeds are transformed, soaked to make them pliable, woven in spirals that grow outward, finished with braided rims for strength. Rope making men twist papyrus fibers, strands rolled against the thigh. Finished ropes soaked in salt water to deter pests, used for fishing nets, rigging, and household ties. Perfume preparation in the cool of the morning. Petals of blue lotus are steeped in oil. Resins from distant lands are ground with honey. Tiny glass bottles, a luxury, are filled for the market. The rhythm of craft. These activities follow nature's clock, spinning and weaving in the heat of day when fields are too hot. Pottery making in the cooler morning hours. Basket work in the evening's golden light. There is no hurry, only the steady accumulation of skill passed from mother to daughter, father to son. A girl's first lopsided pot is kept for holding hairpins. A boy's initial clumsy basket becomes a home for the cat. Each imperfect creation is a stepping stone to mastery. Each day's work a thread in the fabric of domestic life. In the dappled shade of a riverside fig tree, where sunlight filters through broad leaves like pieces of gold, the children of Ptolemaic Egypt pass their early years. This is a world of miniature tools and scaled-down responsibilities, where play and work blend as seamlessly as the colors in a sunset over the Nile. From the first breath drawn in a birthing chamber fragrant with natron and myrrh, to the day they take up adult tools in earnest, children move through their days surrounded by the gentle rhythms of family life. The earliest days, the welcoming rituals. A newborn enters the world amid traditions unchanged for millennia. The umbilical cord is cut with a flint knife, bronze being too precious. Amulets of Bes and Taweret are hung near the sleeping area. The mother is given a broth of fenugreek and dates to restore her strength. Swaddled in linen, infants spend their first months, wrapped in soft, undyed linen bands, carried against their mother's body in a sling during work, rocked to sleep in palm wood cradles with curved bases, first sounds and words. The household echoes with lullabies about cats, catching mice in the moonlight, clicking noises made to soothe a fussy baby, the universal babble of infants everywhere, soon shaping into Egyptian words, the world of play, toys from the earth. Children's playthings are simple but cherished. Rag dolls stuffed with Nile mud and straw, wooden animals with movable legs, balls made from wrapped reeds or leather scraps, games without names. In the dust of courtyards, little girls play house with miniature pots and grinding stones. Boys stage mock battles with stick swords and reed shields. All join in games of toss with knucklebones or pebbles. Lessons in disguise. Even play teaches adult skills. Mud pies prepare little hands for pottery. Toy looms teach the over-under of weaving, gathering pretend harvests in miniature baskets, learning life's rhythms by their mother's side girls. Absorb domestic arts through observation. At 3, sorting lentils from pebbles. By 5, grinding a handful of grain. By 7, tending the household garden. Following father's shadow, boys learn through gradual participation. Carrying water in small jars, mending fish nets with clumsy knots, leading goats to pasture with a switch too big for his hands, the scent of knowledge. Education engages all senses, recognizing herbs by their smell, judging clay's readiness by its feel. Knowing bread is done by its sound when tapped. Formal instruction, temple schools. For privileged children, morning recitations in cool columned halls. Practice in hieratic script on limestone flakes. Learning the sacred stories painted on temple walls. Home lessons. For most children, moral instruction through proverbs and fables. Practical mathematics using fingers and pebbles. Astronomy by counting stars from the rooftop. The Greek influence. In some households, bilingual children switching effortlessly between languages. New alphabet letters mixed with hieroglyphs in the dust stories of Homer, told alongside tales of Horace rites of passage first haircut around age 5. Locks offered to the household gods, a small feast with honey cakes. The child now counted among the family, coming of age at puberty. Girls receive their first mirror and cosmetic palette. Boys are given a proper kilt and bronze tools. Both begin wearing amulets of adulthood. The quiet transition. No fanfare marks the exact moment when play becomes work. Lessons become responsibilities. A child becomes another pair of steady hands in the household. The sweetness of childhood. In the golden hours before dusk, when chores are done, children chase fireflies in the growing shadows. Grandparents tell stories of clever animals and foolish gods. Mothers braid lotus flowers into sleepy daughters' hair. And as the first stars appear, those same stars that will guide them through life, the children of the Nile drift to sleep, their dreams as boundless as the river itself. In the quiet corner of every Ptolemaic home, where lamplight pools like liquid gold upon a modest shelf, the divine makes its dwelling. This is no grand temple with towering columns, but a simple niche holding well-worn figurines, where daily life and eternal truths meet over offerings of bread and flowers. Here, in the space between sweeping floors and kneading dough, the people maintain their conversation with the gods, a dialogue as old as the Nile's first flood, continuing now under Greek rule with only the slightest changes in vocabulary. The household shrine, a sacred microcosm. Even the humblest dwelling dedicates space for devotion. A mud brick niche whitewashed with crushed limestone, a wooden shelf draped with a strip of fine linen, small oil lamps shaped like lotus blossoms. The divine residence. Typical figures might include Bes, the dwarf god, his tongue sticking out to frighten away evil Taweret. Hippopotamus goddess, protecting mothers and children. Osiris, painted green to symbolize renewal. Isis, her wings outstretched in perpetual embrace. Unexpected additions. The Ptolemaic era brings new faces. A tiny bronze Serapis figurine beside traditional gods, a terracotta Aphrodite with Egyptian hairstyle amulets, combining Horus with Zeus's lightning bolts, daily devotions, morning offerings. At first light, before breaking fast, a piece of yesterday's bread placed on a dish, a shallow bowl of fresh Nile water, a single blue lotus flower when in season, the ritual of the lamp. At dusk, the mistress of the house trims the wick with slender bronze tweezers, adds a few drops of precious sesame oil, recites the short hymn to Hathor as light blooms, special occasions for birthdays or anniversaries. Honey cakes shaped like Ankh symbols, miniature pots of the finest beer, handwritten prayers on pottery shards. The cycle of festivals, the beautiful feast of the valley. When the gods visit households, families whitewash their home's exterior, offer special loaves stamped with divine images, leave out wine in decorated cups. The birthday of Isis celebrated with storytelling late into the night, children wearing paper crowns, everyone exchanging small gifts, unexpected moments. Even ordinary days might see a student offering a reed pen before exams, a farmer rubbing a clay ox for good health, a mother whispering to Bess during a child's fever, personal piety, amulets and charms, worn close to the skin, Eye of Horus pendants against envy, Djed pillar beads for stability, tiny scarabs hidden in clothing folds, prayers without temples, spontaneous utterances, a whispered plea while kneading bread dough, a grateful sigh when finding a lost needle, a hummed hymn during weaving dream incubation. Before important decisions, sleeping near the household shrine, placing an offering under the bed, interpreting morning dreams with family. The Greek influence, new rituals, old roots, blended practices emerge. Egyptian-style votives left at Greek shrines, Dionysian festivals incorporating Osirian elements, astrology charts mixing both traditions, language of worship prayers might combine, Egyptian epithets for traditional gods, Greek philosophical concepts, Coptic phrases in personal devotion. The stillness remains. Through all changes persists the comfort of familiar gestures, the scent of incense at dusk, the certainty that gods watch over homes, the last light. As night deepens, the household shrine glows softly. The lamp's flame reflected in polished bronze offerings of the day, removed, eaten by the family. A final prayer whispered before sleep, and the gods, whether called by Egyptian or Greek names, remain awake in the darkness, keeping vigil over the sleeping household, as they have done for countless generations. In the cool morning hours, when the Nile mist still clings to the palms, the women of the household gather where the light is best, on shaded rooftops or in courtyard corners, to perform the ancient alchemy of turning flax into linen. This is no hurried task, but a meditation in motion, where skilled hands transform river-grown plants into cloth as light as a breath, yet strong enough to last generations. The textiles of Ptolemaic Egypt tell silent stories of status and skill, of tradition and subtle innovation under Greek rule. Let us unfold these layers, one delicate thread at a time. From riverbank to robe, the life of linen, the flax harvest. In early spring, when plants stand waist-high, stalks pulled whole from black earth before flowering, bundles soaked in slow-moving canals for weeks, fibers separated by rhythmic beating on flat stones, spinning in the shade, under the sycamore fig, distaff tucked in the arm like a child, spindle whirl humming as it spins, children practicing with tufts of wool. The loom's poetry, vertical looms lean against sun-warmed walls, warp threads weighted with smooth Nile pebbles, shuttles flying like birds between the strands, patterns emerging row by patient row. The clothing of daily life, for the humble basic garments, include shenty, knee-length kilts for men, belted with twisted linen, talasiris, simple sheath dresses pinned at shoulders, sashes, woven bands to secure garments while working. For the well-to-do finely pleated versions feature accordion folds set with starch and pressed under boards, fringed edges with colorful threadwork, beaded net overlays that shimmer with movement. The Greek-influenced new styles appear. Chitons worn over Egyptian undergarments, Himation wraps draped for formal occasions, sashes tied in Macedonian knots. The dyer's art, earth's palette. Natural dyes create subtle hues, madder root, sunset oranges, indigo, deep Nile blues, pomegranate rinds, golden yellows. Resist patterns, creative techniques, produce knot-dyed circles on shawl edges, wax-resist stripes on tunics, stitched patterns that emerge after dyeing adornments and identity jewelry with purpose. Common pieces include collar necklaces of faience beads, cool against the skin, Hathor-headed earrings that chime softly, scarab bracelets with names engraved underneath hairstyles as status. Elaborate arrangements feature braids stiffened with beeswax, hair rings of beaten gold foil, scented cones that melt in the heat, cosmetics as protection daily rituals involve, kohl lines to ward off eye infections, red ochre for sun protection, myrrh-infused oils for perfume. The mender's wisdom. Nothing is wasted. Worn tunics become child's clothes. Frayed edges are reborn as stuffing. Last scraps are woven into rag dolls. In the evening light, grandmothers darn holes with nearly invisible stitches, reinforce hems before they fray, tell stories of garments that outlived their wearers. The language of textiles. Cloth communicates silently. A widow's undyed linen, a bride's red-dyed sash, a scribe's spotless white kilt. Even in death, the bond continues. Favorite wraps buried with the owner, childhood dolls placed in tombs, mummy wrappings inscribed with protective spells, the weaver's legacy. As twilight falls, looms are covered against the dew. Half-finished cloth is rolled in clean linen. Spindles are tucked into woven baskets, and the day's work joins the unbroken thread, stretching back to the earliest dynasties, continuing through Greek rule, weaving onward into futures unseen. As the sun sinks below the western hills, painting the Nile in liquid gold, the households of Ptolemaic Egypt begin their slow, familiar dance of closing the day. This is not the dramatic sunset of desert tales, but a gentle fading, a natural exhale after the day's labors, when tools are set down with satisfaction, and families gather in the cooling air. Let us witness these final hours, where every action carries the quiet weight of ritual, perfected over generations, yet performed as if newly discovered each evening. The last tasks in the courtyard. The final chores unfold with practiced ease. Chickens coaxed into their woven reed coop, clay water jars filled to the brim for night's use, cooking fire banked with ashes to preserve embers. At the loom, the weaver completes her day's work, counting off the last woven inches with her little finger, rubbing linseed oil into the wooden frame, covering the unfinished cloth against the dew in the garden. The herbalist makes her evening rounds, bruising mint leaves to repel insects, gathering chamomile heads for tomorrow's tea, whispering thanks to the plants as she works. The evening meal, simple fare. The family gathers around low tables. Lentil stew reheated with a dash of cumin. Yesterday's bread softened in garlic-infused oil. A special treat of honeyed dates for the children, shared vessels. Dining is communal. One large platter for the main dish, a shared cup of watered wine. Fingers wiping bread across bowls with perfect etiquette. Table talk, conversation flows, like the Nile. The progress of the flax harvest. News from the market, heard secondhand. An uncle's story about crocodiles, told for the 100th time. The bathing ritual for the adults. A moment of quiet cleansing. Water poured from slender-necked jars. Scrubbing with natron salt and palm fiber brushes. Application of almond oil to sun-parched skin. For the children, a more playful affair. Splashing in shallow basins. Giggles echoing off mud brick walls. Grandmother's mock scolding about wasted water, preparing for rest, sleeping arrangements. The house transforms. Woven mats unrolled across smoothed floors. Wooden headrests placed just so. Light blankets shaken free of daytime dust. Nighttime comforts. Small luxuries emerge. A linen pouch of dried lavender by the pillow. A clay cup of water within easy reach. The family cat claiming its favorite spot. Final devotions. At the household shrine, Yesterday's offerings respectfully removed. A fresh lamp lit to burn through the night. One last prayer murmured with eyes on the stars, the sounds of slumber. As true darkness falls, the last neighbor's footsteps fade away. The Nile's voice becomes a distant whisper. Even the frogs grow drowsy in their songs inside the home. Breath slows into sleeping rhythms. A child turns beneath her blanket. The night lamp flickers its watchful light. The stars keep vigil. Beyond the rooftops, the moon silver plates the palm fronds. The circumpolar stars turn their eternal circle. Somewhere, a night fisherman's torch glows like a fallen star, and the great cycle completes itself once more, ready to begin again when dawn's first light touches the eastern horizon, when the smell of fresh bread will once again drift through the streets of Ptolemaic Egypt. Epilogue. Thus concludes our journey through the daily rhythms of Ptolemaic Egypt, from morning's first light to evening's gentle close. May these quiet visions of bread and stars, of looms and lamps, of river and home linger in your thoughts, like the scent of Nile lilies on a summer evening.